all living organisms perform certain vital metabolic activities which depends upon which variety of processes called as nutrition, which is a very important process. And since this is all based on a small cell, means life started from a first, it was started from a cell. Cell is the basic entity for all the activities. So because of that, cell is the base of cellular organization. Also the levels of organization is dependent upon cell. That means a number of cells will form tissues. And what are tissues? Group of cells performing same type of functions, okay, same type of activities. So tissues together will give organs. Okay, organs can be a single organ or a group of organ. That will become the organ system. Okay, for example, digestion. Okay, for the process called digestion, different types of organs together are going to work. Like you have stomach, you have your small intestine, your large intestine. Okay, so variety or many types of activities are taking place in that same system. That is how the food is absorbed in the body. So many metabolic activities will contribute in the life processes because it is dependent upon the main factor, that is taking up of food. Means for every cell to work, to become functional, requirement of energy is always there. If there is no energy, the cell would become non-functional. Alright. Now, as I said, these are the level of organization. Different organ systems will make a complete organism. So when this evolution was taking place, there was just a single simple cell. Okay, either you will find prokaryotic cells or you will find eukaryotic cells. You know what is prokaryotic cells? The cells which have very simple type of nucleus, or sometimes they don't even have nucleus, they have a small structure called as nucleoid. Alright, but other types of cells like the advanced cells which have a well-defined nucleus, which have membrane bound organelles, so all the metabolic activities will be performed by that same single nucleus. Alright, and it will be taking help of all the other organelles also. Alright, so cell is a very important factor. Then nutrition, if I am saying nutrition is taking up of food. Alright, taking up of food means you have first ingestion. Alright, after that you have digestion, absorption and assimilation, and finally egestion. Alright, so these are the steps involved when an organism takes up nutrition. Okay, when an organism knows how to get nutrients, the basic nutrients that an organism requires is carbohydrates, proteins, because the cell wall, it's made up of lipoprotein membrane. Lipoprotein means what? It will need lipids and it will also need proteins. Okay, so proteins are the building blocks of our body, so it's very important that through the diet, through the food, the cell will absorb proteins. Okay, and proteins would be then broken down into amino acids here. So here digestion, in the digestion there is breakdown, means what a person or what an organism is eating, it will break it down into simple molecules, because directly it cannot take up carbohydrates, directly it cannot take proteins, it needs to break it down into amino acids and different smaller constituents. Okay, for that it will break it down. Then comes absorption. Absorption means it is going to absorb in the fluid, in the cytoplasm, in the lymph of the body, so that every other part, every other organ will get nutrition, will get energy. Then assimilation. translocating that nutrients to different parts of the body. Means whatever is absorbed, all the nutrients which are absorbed, which would be taken to the parts of the body, smallest of cell will receive nutrition so that it will become functional. From non-functional it will become functional once it will get nutrition. And finally, the egestion. Egestion means where all the undigested food or the waste products of the body, the nitrogenous waste that the body prepares, releases, it is egestion. It is either released through the anus, or kidneys also always start filtering blood all the time, and all this urea, uric acid and different forms of nitrogenous waste is being released out of the body. Clear? Now, coming back to the very important part, or the basic of nutrition. See, since basic functions, as I said, are nutrition, respiration, photosynthesis, it is based on types, or rather the modes of nutrition. Okay, modes में you have two major types: autotrophic and heterotrophic. Based on the type of cells, okay, based on the complexity, whether it is a simple cell, whether it is an advanced cell, we have modes of nutrition. Okay, the more complex it will be, the more complex nutrition it will perform, because it will have those kinds of cells present inside it, or those kinds of tissues. Alright, so autotrophic and heterotrophic. Now here in autotrophic, most of the time the organisms which can make their own food with the help of raw materials. Alright, means they don't have to depend on other organisms for their nutrition. They can survive on their own, they can make their own food. Now what is the food that they are going to make? Glucose, okay, which would be stored in that organism's body in the form of starch. Okay, starch is a type of complex polysaccharide. Alright. Okay, starch is a type of complex polysaccharide. This complex polysaccharide is simplest form is glucose, fructose. Okay, this is a 6-carbon atom molecule, C6H12O6. And when this molecule, which is the simplest form of carbohydrate, will get broken down, then what you get is energy. Okay, when this molecule breaks down, what you get is energy, and this energy is what the organism requires to become functional, to work. Alright, so energy is a very important factor which is brought about by this nutrition. Now here in autotrophic, as I said, all the organisms which can make their own food. Now how will they make their own food? Obviously by photosynthesis. Okay, so here in autotrophic, you again have two types, that is phototropic and chemotrophic. So they need certain raw materials to become functional, but they can make their own food. They can get their nutrition with the help of their own metabolic activities. Alright, so phototropic, also called as photosynthesis, and chemotropic is also called as chemosynthetic. So photosynthesis, that means all the green plants, alright, all the green plants which can perform photosynthesis. And why they can perform photosynthesis? Because they have chlorophyll pigment. This is the most crucial, chlorophyll pigment is the most crucial photosynthetic pigment. Without this, a plant cannot make their own food. Alright, so green plants. I am stressing on green because chlorophyll is a green pigment. Okay, and most of the plants have this chlorophyll in their plant cells, in their cells, especially the leaf, the young stem. Alright, the green part of any plant will be able to perform photosynthesis, but it is always in the presence of sunlight, because the raw materials which are required is sunlight, water, okay, and CO2. Alright, so green plants, chlorophyll, many types of chlorophyll pigment are there that we'll discuss in the further part. Then chemosynthetic. Okay, chemosynthetic is different types of bacteria which take nutrition from minerals or from atmosphere. Alright, different nitrifying bacteria are there which fix atmospheric nitrogen, different iron bacteria, then bacteria which live in extreme conditions, halophils that we call. Okay, so they also perform their, or they take up nutrition from their own food. Okay, they'll make their own food. So all the bacteria like nitrifying, nitrobacter, then as I said, iron bacteria, methane producing bacteria. So they will take up their nutrition from the atmosphere by fixing them. They have certain enzymes which are capable. So most of these bacteria are prokaryotic. So complexity, even though it is a very simple type of cell, the complexity is much more, because that one cell is performing all the activities. They do not have membrane bound organelles. That only one cell or that prokaryotic cell will perform all types of activities for the bacteria, for its survival. That's why they are chemosynthetic, means chemically they are making their own food. And here they will always need light. Without sunlight, they cannot make their own food. So autotrophic is plants as well as chemosynthetic bacteria which can prepare their own food. They don't need to depend on other organisms for their nutrition. Understood this part? Alright. So heterotrophic. Now in heterotrophic, again you have three modes, or you can say three sub-modes of nutrition. Heterotrophic are the organisms which have to depend on other organisms for their nutrition. Means either they will be hunting or they'll be eating plants. Alright, so any other way in which it is dependent on the autotrophic organisms for their nutrition. Alright, so here we have parasitic, saprophytic, and holozoic. Alright, parasitic is different types of organisms always depend on their host cell. Okay, means they will try to infect the host organism, they will attack it and take up nutrition from the host. Alright, so those are called as parasites. Alright, it can be worms which are attacking the body. Alright, it can be a bacteria, a fungi, or any kind of protozoan which is infecting or which is attacking inside a healthy cell and taking up the nutrition of that healthy cell for its survival. Means it will multiply inside that healthy cell and eventually it will kill that cell, or it will destroy that cell. Alright, so parasitism or parasitic type of nutrition is also one of the heterotrophic nutrition, because it will always depend on the host body, on the host organism for their food and also for their shelter. It's overall, because without host organisms, these organisms cannot survive. Alright, so parasites are worms like roundworms, Astelminthis species, platyhelminths, tapeworm, then hookworm, different disease-causing organisms which are mostly growing inside the intestine of humans as well as animals. Alright, and because of these worms, we get certain diseases like dysentery, diarrhea, different types of intestinal, gastrointestinal diseases, because they will live inside the intestine and they will try to take up our nutrition for their survival, which leads to different diseases like stomach ache or diarrhea or dysentery. Alright, so worms are there. Then other parasites are viruses, which are attacking the healthy cells and multiply inside them. Bacteriophages, which attack bacteria. Alright, then different bacteria also. Then fungi, like yeast infection. Okay, so these all are parasites because they will always take up the nutrition of host cell. Here. Then comes saprophytic. Now saprophytic is organisms which perform decomposition. What is decomposition? Breaking down of all complex organisms or dead or decaying plant and animals into smallest of nutrients. Now what happens is when organisms die, be it any plant or any animal, when organisms die, be it any plant or animal, it is going to be absorbed in the soil, and soil has certain decomposing bacteria, certain organisms which break down the dead and decaying organic matter into simplest of forms, and these nutrients are then absorbed by the soil and which forms humus. Humus is like a fertilizer which helps the plants to grow. Alright, so saprophytic is a very healthy way of nutrition in which these organisms will depend upon dead and decaying organic matter. Alright, so most of the bacteria like soil microorganisms and fungi are saprophytic in their mode of nutrition. Then comes holozoic. Holozoic is they need live organisms. Now here the difference between these three is parasites they need a host cell, saprophyte they need dead and decaying organic matter for their nutrition, but holozoic will always need live organisms, okay, for their nutrition. They will depend upon different plants, they will depend upon different animals for their nutrition, alright, or the products made from those animals. Alright, so holozoic again has three other modes. Alright, first is herbivores or herbivorous, then carnivores, carnivorous, and omnivores. Omnivores. Okay, herbivores are the organisms which will only feed on plants. Okay, all the green plants, be it any twig, leaves or fruits or different types of plant products that they can consume. So herbivores are all the organisms which depend on plants exclusively, like cow, buffalo, which are grazing on grasses. Alright, so cow, sheep, goat. These are the different examples of herbivorous animals. Then comes carnivores, which are flesh-eating, organisms. Okay, they will be needing meat or flesh. They will either hunt it or they will get it from, or they can also feed it from other animals. Alright, so carnivores are tiger, lion. Most of the wild animals will come under these categories because they will always hunt the animals in the forest and they will depend on their nutrition. Alright, so tiger, lion, leopard, shark, snake, reptiles, okay, different types of wild animals which will come under carnivorous category because that is their mode of nutrition. Then comes omnivores. Now organisms which can survive on both plants as well as animals are coming under omnivores. Alright, like humans, they can eat both vegetarian food also and non-vegetarian food also. So humans, then cats, dogs, they can depend on milk as well as flesh. Alright, fishes they can eat. Alright, so omnivores can be all type of organisms which can feed on both plants as well as animals. Okay, understood this all types of nutrition modes. Okay, first I'll repeat: autotrophic, which will make their own food; heterotrophic, which will depend on other organisms for their nutrition. Then in autotrophic you have photosynthetic and chemosynthetic. Photosynthetic, which will always perform photosynthesis with the help of chlorophyll, sunlight, water and other raw materials, and make their own food. What would be the food that they are making? It would be glucose, and this glucose is stored in the body in the form of starch. Okay. Then chemotropic, the organisms which fix atmospheric nitrogen, atmospheric gases for their nutrition and convert them. They are chemosynthetic, like most of the bacteria, nitrifying bacteria, methane bacteria. Okay. Then sulfur producing bacteria. Then other is heterotrophic mode, in which the organism depends upon other organisms for their nutrition. Here we have parasitic, saprophytic and holozoic. Parasitic would be all the organisms which need host cell, which will attack the host cell, live on the nutrition of that host cell and take shelter from that host cell. Means over a period of time it is going to destroy that host cell. Means by taking all the nutrition it is going to attack it and infect it. Alright, so worms, viruses, bacteria, fungi and also protozoans, okay, are all parasitic in their nutrition. Protozoans, like you must be knowing malaria. Okay, malaria mein you have plasmodium, which is a protozoan which is present inside the gut of malarial mosquito, that is female Anopheles mosquito. And when this mosquito will bite a healthy person, that plasmodium would be transferred in the bloodstream of that healthy person, where it will take up as a host cell. Okay, and this plasmodium is then going to multiply, causing malaria in that healthy person. And that healthy person will become infected because of this plasmodium. Then saprophytic mode of nutrition, in that organisms which feed on dead and decaying organic matter, converting the complex organic matter into the simplest forms and increasing the fertility of a soil. So in a way they are the cleaning agents of our environment. They are very much helpful. Without saprophytic mode of nutrition, we wouldn't get all the nutrients which are there in the soil. Alright, so decomposing bacteria. Then holozoic will be feeding on live organisms, which will depend upon different types of plants and animals for their nutrition. In that you have herbivores, carnivores and omnivores. Herbivores would be all the organisms which are feeding on plants, like cow, sheep, goat. Then organisms which are feeding on different animals, they are carnivores, that is tiger, lion, shark, snake, reptiles, all the wild animals. And omnivores, which are all the organisms which can eat both plants as well as animals, which take nutrition from plants as well as animals. Understood this part? Okay, so we can move ahead with this mode. Means one by one we are going to see all the modes in detail. First is this, because in the energy pyramid, or you can say in our ecosystem, the most crucial part of our ecosystem is plants, because they are the primary producers. They are at the base, and if they are in abundance, then only our ecosystem would be balanced, because they are the base. They are the one who produce glucose, who are producing energy, and this energy is then passed on to different trophic levels. Those are called as primary trophic level, secondary trophic level, tertiary trophic level. So basically it is the producers which are making food on which other organisms or other types of species are dependent. So we are first going to deal with photosynthesis and how plants are going to produce starch, that is glucose. All right. Okay. Now, the photosynthesis is a very important life process. All right. The reaction means what it needs. The basic reaction that we'll discuss first. It takes 6 CO2 molecules. Okay. Plus, this is the basic reaction. I'm balancing it for the sake of getting the desired products, but it can be more or less molecules also. Okay, so for the formation of one glucose molecule, we require 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 12 water molecules. And this reaction would be always taking place in the presence of sunlight. Without sunlight, photosynthesis cannot occur, or any source of light, that is monochromatic source of light, sunlight, and chlorophyll pigment, which are told is the photosynthetic pigment present inside the plant cell. Original called chloroplast is going to contain chlorophyll. Alright, and in the presence of this with CO2 and water, what we get is C6H12O6 plus we are getting 6 molecules of oxygen. So both the products which are formed at the end of photosynthesis are very, very important for other life processes. Means what we are forming is here is glucose. This is glucose molecule. And along with that, what you are getting is oxygen. So oxygen is a life-saving gas. Without oxygen, any aerobic organism cannot survive. Alright, so oxygen and glucose. This glucose is stored in the plant body in the form of starch and other carbohydrate material. Okay, this is a carbohydrate, polysaccharide, or you can say complex polysaccharide. Alright, understood? This is photosynthesis reaction where one glucose molecule is formed with the help of sunlight, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide and water molecules. Alright, so now we are going to see one by one different phases of reaction, because there are 2 types of parts in which photosynthesis is divided. One is called as light reaction and other is dark reaction. Now, as the name suggests, light reaction means obviously in the presence of light. Without light, light reaction cannot take place. Alright, so it is also called as photochemical reaction. Alright, so where light reaction is there, that light would be absorbed, and light would be absorbed in the form of photons. Okay, photons, or they are called as energy packets, in which electrons get excited and energy molecules are formed. So that is light reaction. Then dark reaction, it is independent of light, it doesn't need light. Okay, and it is always absorption of CO2. In dark reaction, absorption of CO2 takes, and particular places in the chloroplast. See, the site of photosynthesis is a molecule called chloroplast. Okay, this is the site of photosynthesis. Now, in this chloroplast, there are 2 regions, grana and stroma. Okay. Now, grana region will be having chlorophyll pigments which are capable of absorbing light. Alright, that is in the form of photons. Now, grana will be obviously, if it is absorbing light, so light reaction यहाँ पे होगा. In the light reaction is taking place inside the grana. And the dark reaction means whatever products are formed in the light reaction would be transferred to stroma. The stroma is the fluid of chloroplast. So here, this is the site of dark reaction, okay, which is independent of light. Whether light is there or not there, stroma will always perform dark reaction. Alright, now first we are going to see the structure of chloroplast, so all these things will become more clear to you. Okay, now structure of chloroplast, I'll just draw this figure here. It is a discoid-like structure, semicircular, sometimes it's circular only, like a very small organelle present inside the plant cell. You know plant cell, it will have a cell wall, it will have a cell membrane. Then majority of the space in the plant cell is going to take up by vacuole. That is, it is containing cell sac. Alright, so all the organelles would be scattered at the periphery, that is at the sides towards the cell membrane of the plant cell, because majority of the place is occupied by vacuole. So nucleus would be at the periphery. Below that you will have rough endoplasmic reticulum, then smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and some place would be occupied by mitochondria and chloroplast. So maximum of the plant cell, means you can say one cell, per cell you will have few chloroplasts present. Alright, so each of these chloroplasts will be showing this kind of a structure. It will be a double membrane structure. Okay, so that is why a eukaryotic cell will always have chloroplast, okay, which is double membrane, means membrane bound. Membrane bound is another word for double membrane. Alright. Here it will have small lamellase which will be attached to a discoid-like structure, and these lamellase are always attached to the inner membrane of the chloroplast. Alright, it will be filled with a fluid. This is called as the proteinaceous fluid, called as stroma. Okay, this is also called as matrix present, and this is the fluid which will contain all types of enzymes, all kinds of metabolic activities will be taking place in the stroma, which is the dark reaction. Now these discoid-like structures are called as grana, where your light reaction is going to take place. Alright, so grana, if you see the structure of grana, it will have small stack-like structures. If you see the microscopic structure of one grana is called as granum. Single grana is called as granum, and a number of grana. Sometimes chloroplast molecule structure is going to have some 40 to 60 granums present. Okay, so together they will be called as grana. Single unit is a granum, and if you see a microscopic structure of one granum, it will have stack-like structures placed one above the other. It's like a stack of coins. 3-4 stacks are present, and this single stack is called a thylakoid. Single stack of grana. So many such thylakoids, around 3 to 4 thylakoids are placed one above the other, which will form one grana. If you see the microscopic structure of that thylakoid, they will have small units present arranged in a particular fashion. Now these units are called as quantasomes. Okay, or one quanta. Now these quantasomes would be having the chlorophyll pigments present inside it. So chlorophyll is a unit of one thylakoid or one quantasome. So around 200 to 250 chlorophyll units will be present. This is the structure of one quantasome. Alright, and inside that you have many chlorophyll molecules present. Not just chlorophyll molecules, but different other molecules also. They are called as accessory pigments and essential pigments. Okay, so photosynthesis is dependent. Photosynthesis is dependent upon two pigments, essential and accessory. Now, essential pigments are, without that, these pigments photosynthesis cannot occur. Means all the types of chlorophyll. There are around 3 to 4 types of chlorophyll pigments. Chlorophyll A, B, C, D, E. Alright. This will form the essential pigments because these are the site for the light reaction. But accessory pigments are the helping pigments, which there is a photon or a spectrum of light, which is called as visible spectrum. So this spectrum of light has a white light, and white light have 7 different wavelengths. Alright, they have 7 different wavelengths where different colors would be present, and these colors are attracting these pigments. Alright, so accessory pigments would be carotenes, which is a reddish orange color pigment. Then xanthophyll, which is a yellow color pigment. And phycobilin, which is a brown color pigment. Alright, so different types of pigments are present in this quantazome. Okay, so 200 to 250 pigments are there on an average in these quantazomes, and out of this, one place where all the chlorophyll molecules would be accumulated or would be most active, and this place becomes the reaction center. This place becomes the reaction center. Now, this is the place in every quantazome. Now you can imagine how many quantazomes are present per thylakoid. Now this is just one thylakoid I am talking about. The next thylakoid is again going to have the same type of quantazomes. Similarly, in the next thylakoid, it will have the same type of quantazomes. And these are the single granum unit. As if there are around 40 to 50 granum units present per chloroplast. Now you can imagine the amount of reaction centers present. Now all these reaction centers are together going to absorb light. And sometimes in certain thylakoids there can be more than one reaction center also. Now this reaction center is going to absorb all types of lights, and they will be correlating with certain types of wavelengths. Means for absorbing a particular light, the frequency should be matched. Now the visible spectrum would be under the wavelength of around 370 to somewhere around 750 is the wavelength. Now this is the wavelength at which light gets absorbed basically. Alright, so chlorophyll molecules are most comfortable or most get attracted to the wavelength of 700 and 650. Alright, so between this maximum absorption of light takes place, and this absorption leads to excitation, that is called as photoexcitation of electrons. Now when this photoexcitation of electrons takes place, the number of energy molecules will be forming each step of light reaction. Okay, so this is light reaction which is taking place in the reaction center. So reaction center becomes the site for light reaction. Okay, so reaction center is nothing but chlorophyll A. We can call it as chlorophyll A because chlorophyll A is the most important pigment for photosynthesis. Okay, now coming back to the reaction center, as I told you, the other parts of the chloroplast is all fluid, it is all matrix. This lamellae which are connecting two granum together, they are called as intergranule lamellae. Okay, they are helping the chlorophyll molecules to interact with each other, and whatever energy is formed at the end of light reaction would be transferred through this lamellae, and then eventually it would be taken up by the stroma. And in the stroma, it is the site for dark reaction because it is independent of light. It does not need light for their synthesis. Now this dark reaction would be taking place in the stroma. It is filled with proteinaceous matrix, and it will also have its own ribosomes. Along with that, it will also have its own DNA. Okay, that's why chloroplast is also called as a semi-autonomous organelle. What it is called as? A semi-autonomous organelle. Means it can replicate on its own since it has its own DNA. It can make its own proteins since it has its own ribosomes. So it doesn't need to depend upon the other cell organelle, for example the nucleus of the plant cell. It can function on its own. That's why it is called as semi-autonomous organelle, because of its own DNA and because of its own ribosomes. So this was the structure of chloroplast. So remember, light reaction takes place in the granum. Inside the granum you have quantazomes, okay, thylakoids. Inside the thylakoid you have quantazomes, and inside the quantazomes you have pigments. There are essential pigments, there are accessory pigments, and all the chlorophyll molecules would be accumulated at one part or one place, that is called as reaction center. Alright, now we will be dealing with the light reaction, in which what is happening at the reaction center, that is this wavelengths of light would be getting attracted, light is absorbed, and at the same time molecules will get excited. So we will be dealing with light reaction now. Light reaction is also called as photophosphorylation. It is called as photophosphorylation, means in the presence of light. Photo means what? In the presence of light. Phosphorylation means what is forming. Okay, what is forming here is ATP molecules. ATP, as you all know, ATP is adenosine triphosphate, which is an energy molecule. So whenever there is photo excitation, when I am saying light is absorbed, so this is the sun, light is being absorbed here. So photo excitation of electrons is taking place. So whenever one electron is jumping from one electron acceptor to another electron acceptor, what is happening here is ATP is produced. That's why photophosphorylation means formation of ATP molecules. So at each step there are electron acceptors. Electron acceptors are giving rise to ATP molecules. ATP molecules are very important for the further dark reaction. If there are no ATP molecules, dark reaction won't be getting the energy required to perform. Alright. So in photophosphorylation you again have two types of photophosphorylation. One is cyclic, other is non-cyclic. Alright. Now, before starting with this, chlorophyll A, which I told you, the chemical formula for it is C55H72O5N4 and magnesium. So this is the molecular formula for chlorophyll A. Similarly, chlorophyll B will also have a similar kind of molecular formula, not exactly same. It would be somewhere H would be 70, this would be 5N4 and Mg. Alright, so these are different molecular formulas of the pigments, most essential pigments of our light reaction. Now what is happening here is, as I said, factors are essential for photosynthesis. Now factors essential, I told you, light, then CO2. Okay, and CO2 would be absorbed only when stomata is open. Okay, so the opening and closing of stomata also needs water. Okay, so when too much of water gets accumulated around the stomatal opening, those are the kidney shaped cells present. So what happens is the stomata will open. And if there is no water available, so in order to save a lot of water, because transpiration is something that plants have to perform in order to maintain the balance of their internal systems. Alright, so when less water or no water is available, this stomata is going to shrink and it is going to close, so that there is no loss of water and no gases can also enter the plant. So water is very essential for stomatal opening. Alright, then chlorophyll. As I told you, without chlorophyll, there is no photosynthesis. Alright. Now, as I told you, the visible spectrum is in the range of 390 to 780. 390 nanometer, that's the unit of wavelength, to 780 nanometer. So, between this, light is absorbed. Okay. Red light, or the area which is absorbing more, is the red wavelength. Alright, and green light absorbs the very less amount of photons of light. Why? Because green light generally reflects, because the color of chlorophyll is also green. So green light is going to reflect and red or blue light is going to take up more and more. So maximum photosynthesis occurs in the red light and very less or no photosynthesis occurs in the green light. Alright. Now coming back again to cyclic. Now why it is called as cyclic and why this is called as non-cyclic? Now, as I told you, electrons get excited from here because of light absorption. Okay. Now once an electron gets absorbed, you know the rule of chemistry where one electron will always try to make itself balanced or stable. In any other way, it will always try to become stable. Stability is very important. Okay, so whichever electron get excited, it should again become stable. Means there is something called as ground state and excited state. Okay, so when an electron is excited, it will again try to come back in its stable or ground state. Alright, so what is happening here, once the electron gets excited, it will go through a series of electron acceptor and it will again come back to the reaction center. Means from where it is excited, it will come back. So that is one cycle is repeated or one cycle gets completed. That is called as cyclic. When the electron which is excited again comes back to the reaction center, this is called as cyclic. Okay, and in non-cyclic what happens is whichever electron gets excited, it will go through the same series of changes, but the same electron is not going to come back. Electron will always come because reaction center will always try to maintain its stability. Alright, but the same electron won't be coming back to the electron reaction center. That's why this type of reaction is called as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, so cyclic mein you have now this is your reaction center. This is called as PS photosystem 1. Okay, PS is what? Photosystem 1. It is also called as P700. Now 700 is the wavelength at which electrons are getting excited. Alright, now what happens is electron gets excited. This is one electron. Okay, this is happening in the reaction center. Okay, so electron gets excited. Then here we have FRS. And FRS is a electron acceptor. That is pyridoxine reducing substance. What is FRS? Pyridoxine reducing substance. You can, if you don't need to remember this FRS, you can directly remember as Z, some electron acceptor. Okay, no need to remember the name. You can at least always remember any particular letter. Say Z. So Z becomes the first electron acceptor. Okay, from Z, the electron is going to jump. Now what happens is photoexcitation. The minute it accepts, okay, the electron is accepted by the electron acceptor. At the same time, it will ionize. Okay, once ionization will take place, again it will jump to other electron acceptor. So this electron, once it is taken back, again it will release. So this will jump to pyridoxine. Pyridoxine, so it will come to cytochrome. These are just names of electron acceptor. You don't need to remember them. You can directly write certain letters. Okay, cytochrome B6 is cytochrome F. Then comes plastocyanine. And from plastocyanine, that electron will again come back to the photosystem. Now since it is getting excited, it's jumping from one acceptor to another, and again another, again another, then plastocyanine, and from plastocyanine it will come back. So this is a complete cycle which is there. That's why cyclic photophosphorylation. Now what is the reason behind this cycle is, at every jump, ADP and IP will fuse to form an ATP molecule. Okay, sometimes one molecule is present, sometimes two. In some books, two molecules are given. So in some books, one molecule is given. Alright, so when it's crucially jumping from one electron acceptor to another, ATP molecules are formed, which is the main reason behind the cyclic photophosphorylation, because ATPs are necessary for dark reaction. If there is no ATP, there won't be any dark reaction. Alright, so ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate, plus one inorganic phosphate will together fuse to form as ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. Similarly at the next step. Now the end product of cyclic is what? 2 ATPs. Alright, but along with this ATP, we also need one more important product that is called as NADP. Okay, NADP is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. It is again a very important catalyst, or you can say a precursor to make the dark reaction, okay, to perform the dark reaction. So NADP is formed in non-cyclic type of photophosphorylation. Alright, so I'll repeat the cyclic part. What is happening here is you have a photosystem, that is the reaction center. P700, 700 is the wavelength at which light is being absorbed, and that leads to photoexcitation of electron. The excited electron is taken up by the electron acceptor, that is FRS, pyridoxine reducing substance. Then again, as soon as it gets accepted, it is again released, or it jumps to another electron acceptor. From pyridoxine it will go to cytochrome B6. From cytochrome B6 it will go to cytochrome F. From there it will come to plastocyanine, and from plastocyanine it is again going to go back in the reaction center, that is the photosystem. Now at every electron jump, what is forming is ADP molecule plus IP molecule, giving rise to a ATP molecule. So the end product of a cyclic photophosphorylation is only ATPs. But along with ATP, we need one more product, one more byproduct, or you can say a raw material, that is NADP, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. And to gain this, we need to perform non-cyclic. So plant is also going to perform non-cyclic along with cyclic. Now in non-cyclic, what happens is both the photosystems are involved. Now this is PS2, that is P68. Alright. Now 4 electrons. In cyclic there were 2 electrons, or 1 electron which was photoexcited. Here 4 electrons get photoexcited. It is taken by electron acceptor, say Q. Okay, Q is actually PQRS, plastoquinine reducing substance. Okay, you can give it a name as Q. From there it is going to go to PQ, is going to go to another electron acceptor, that electron system, that is PS1, that is P700. From here again it gets photoexcited, taken up by Z. From Z it is going to go to pyridoxine. Okay, here it is going to go through a series of electron acceptor, that is cytochrome B6, plastocyanine, cytochrome F, plastocyanine, and all. Alright, now here there is a change which is occurring. Now 4 electrons are there. At the same time, photolysis of water takes place. What is photolysis of water? You know Robert Hill's reaction. Now Robert Hill is the person who discovered the light reaction of photosynthesis, light reaction as well as dark reaction. Now he stated that photolysis of water takes place during photophosphorylation. Photolysis of water takes place during photophosphorylation. Now what is photolysis of water? It is splitting of water molecule. Splitting of water molecule is between H plus ions and OH minus ions. Okay. What is happening here is splitting. H plus would be other ion, that is a positive ion, and OH minus is the negative charged ion, negatively charged ion. So this photolysis of water is very important for non-cycling. It takes place during the electron transfer at the same time. So that is why the splitting of water molecule reaction is called as Hill's reaction, because it was discovered by Hill. Alright. Now, how did Robert Hill came to this conclusion that photolysis is occurring? Now, you know the main photosynthesis reaction in which water is there along with CO2. Okay, so earlier the scientists who were studying upon photosynthesis, who were doing research upon that, they thought, or they were under the conception that whatever oxygen is coming at the end, or whatever oxygen is released at the end of photosynthesis, it is from CO2. Okay, because CO2 is there and at the end it is O2. So they thought कि CO2 splits into carbon and oxygen is released. That was their conception or misconception. Okay, but Robert Hill proved that whatever oxygen is released during photosynthesis is not from CO2, but it is from water. It is coming from water. It is because of splitting of water molecule that oxygen gets separated. And this was proved by Robert Hill and many other physiologists after that with the help of isotopes. That is isotopes of oxygen we have O16, O18. O16, O18. Okay, so they used both these isotopes. So at the end, whatever oxygen was released, it had the O18 type of isotope which was there in the water molecule and not in the CO2. So that proved that whatever oxygen is released is actually released due to splitting of water molecule and not because of CO2. And that led to the Robert Hill's reaction. Now we'll again come back to the non-cyclic part. Now, this pyridoxine, it is an electron acceptor. There are 4 electrons present. Now, at the same time, photolysis is occurring. That is 2H2O giving rise to 4H plus, 2H plus and 2OH minus. Okay. And this is actually nothing but 4H plus. Okay, if you split this, it will become 4H, 4H and 4E. If you remove the negative charge from here, alright, and this will be released in the form of oxygen once it is balanced. Alright, splitting of water molecule is taking place, and this H2, it goes, NADP is already present in the reaction center. This NADP combines with H2 and gives you 2NADPH2. This is the main important product, okay, which is as a result of photolysis of water. And these 4E minus will again come back to the reaction center from where it is excited. Okay, so that is how a non-cyclic photophosphorylation takes place, where from photosystem 2, the electrons get excited. It is taken up from, it is absorbed by electron acceptor, that is PQRS, plastoquinone reducing substance. That is nothing but Q. From there, the electrons get transferred to plastoquinone. From quinine, it will go through a series of electron acceptor, that is cytochrome B6, cytochrome F, plastocyanine. From plastocyanine, it is going to get absorbed by P700, that is photosystem 1. Photosystem photosystem 1 again releases or gets photoexcited. It is activated, and these electrons are accepted by another electron acceptor which was there in the cyclic photophosphorylation, that is Z. From Z, these 4 electrons which are charged, okay, it goes to ferredoxine. Now when it reaches ferredoxine, in the reaction center, NADP, 2 molecules of NADP, this 2 and 2, everything which is given 2, it is there just for balancing sake. There can be more molecules of NADP produced in many non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So just for explanation's sake, I am giving the balancing stuff because 2 molecules are needed basically for the dark reaction. Similarly, 2 molecules or more than 2 molecules are needed in the dark reaction from the cyclic photophosphorylation. Right, so don't get confused between the balancing stuff. Just remember the products which are formed because the products are asked in the exams. Alright, so NADP is already there. It combines with the hydrogen molecule which was a result of splitting of water molecule, that is nothing but photolysis. Alright, so that splitting releases separate hydrogen molecule and OH minus ions. This hydrogen molecule, the positive charge is taken up, that is 4p minus, it will get balanced. This would be used for the photolysis. Alright, but 4 electrons has to go back. Alright, you are understanding me? These 4 electrons are used for splitting of water molecule. Okay, they are being used up here. So there is no electrons left for it to go back. That's why photolysis of water is again splitting, that is 4H is again splitting the negative charge, that is the 4 electrons are again released to come back to the photosystem. That will only stabilize this reaction. If these reactions, if these electrons are not released, the reaction center won't become stable. Alright, so in order to make it stable, 4H again splits into 4 electrons are separated, and this H would be taken here, that is H2, and then as a result you get this product NADPH2. Alright, and one more thing here, ADP plus IP is going to give you ATP. So the end product of non-cyclic photophosphorylation is 1 ATP molecule and 2 molecules of NADPH2. Okay, NADPH2 is nothing but nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. Now hydrogen is added to it as a result of photolysis of water. Okay, and then the remaining 4 electron comes back to the reaction center and the reaction center becomes stable. Alright, so in non-cyclic both photosystems are functional, that is PS1 P700 and PS2 P680. Alright, so both the systems play a very important role, giving rise to transfer of electrons from one system to another, and during that transfer ATP molecule is formed, and during ferredoxine this electron acceptor, water molecules get splits up, hydrogen molecules get attached to the NADPH2 to form NADPH2, and electrons will be released or taken up by the electron system or the photosystem. And whatever oxygen is released, it is released as a result of the remaining oxygen molecules, which is the split part of water. Okay, so water का जो oxygen है, it is released during the non-cyclic photophosphorylation and not during the cyclic photophosphorylation. So there is a difference, or you can say both the cyclic as well as non-cyclic are equally important for the plant, because dark reaction needs NADP, it also needs NADPH2, it needs actually, and it also needs lots of ATPs for its functioning. And obviously lots of ATPs would be formed only when the plant is going to perform many types of cyclic reactions, and this is happening in one quantazone, remember. Okay, reaction center per quantazone. So how many more quantazones would be present in each thylakoid, how many more thylakoids are present in each granum, and how many granums are present, that is how many grana are present. Alright, so you can imagine the number of cyclic photophosphorylation taking place per chloroplast. So you can imagine how many chloroplasts are present in one plant cell. So the rate at which photosynthesis occur, because many ATP molecules are formed, many NADPH2 molecules are formed, which are then used in the dark reaction. Understood this part? Any doubt? Alright. So this was the cyclic and non-cyclic. For the dark reaction, this reaction is also called as biochemical reaction. Why biochemical reaction? Because it doesn't need any light. What it needs is only enzymes and the products which are formed out of the light reaction. What are the products that we have from light reaction? NADPH2 and ATPs. These are the products. And these products are used in the dark reaction. Now where is the dark reaction taking place? The stroma part of chloroplast. That is the matrix of chloroplast. It is regulated by enzymes. It is regulated by the products of light reaction. Alright. And its metabolic activities are also controlled by the small genetic information which is present in the chloroplast. Alright. Now, there are three steps or three main steps involved. There are three main steps involved in dark reaction. Dark reaction is also called as Calvin cycle. The other name is C3 cycle. Okay. Why it is called as C3 cycle? Because the first stable product in this cycle is a 3-carbon atom, a tricarboxylic acid cycle. Okay, that's why it is called as C3 cycle or Kelvin cycle. Kelvin cycle because it was first discovered by Kelvin. He was a person who used to study the journey of carbon through the photosynthetic cycle. Now steps involved is first carboxylation, then reduction, synthesis of glucose, and finally regeneration. Okay, so the first precursor, or you can say molecule which is performing carboxylation here is RUBP. Okay, RUBP is called as ribulose biphosphate, which is going to take up, it was actually RUMP, that is ribulose monophosphate plus 1 phosphate molecule is going to give you ribulose biphosphate. Okay, our ribulose biphosphate takes up CO2, that is called as carboxylation, and it forms Rubisco, that is a unstable product. Okay, this is the 6-carbon atom unstable product, because for making one glucose molecule, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide are required. So this becomes a 6-carbon atom compound, which is an unstable compound, that is Rubisco. Alright, and it will go through a series of changes, or it will go through formation of many types of compounds, and during that ATPs would be used up, NADPH2 would be reduced to NADP again. Okay, because NADPH2 is the product that we got from light reaction, and this gets reduced, and this NADP is again will go back to grana. And what we are forming, what happens after Rubisco, it goes to a series of compounds, and ATPs are used, and NADPH2 is used. Synthesis of glucose takes place. C6H12O6, and this glucose would be stored in the leucoplast, that is the storage original of the plant cell in the form of starch, and the rest remaining portion would be for regeneration of RUBP. This is Calvin cycle, where again the same starting point, starting product should form, so that the Calvin cycle will keep on repeating, will keep on forming. Alright, so for that reason RUBP is going to take up. So this is the starting. Remember the steps involved in Calvin cycle. What are the steps? Carboxylation, where RUBP is going to take up carbon dioxide and form Rubisco, which is an unstable 6-carbon compound. Alright, and this unstable 6-carbon compound is going to take up ATPs, and it's going to take up NADPH2, which is formed in the light reaction, gets reduced to NADP. Okay, ATPs gets utilized, so ATP will be utilized here and again gets broken down into ADP plus IP, and this part again also goes back to grana, because cycle should get repeated. So whatever products are formed, the remaining part will always go to the grana, and grana mein again the cyclic photophosphorylation mein these products would be used up, cyclic as well as non-cyclic. So what we are getting here at the reduction is synthesis of glucose. So in the remaining part of carbon compound would be forming the synthesis of glucose, and this glucose would be stored in the plant body in the form of starch, and then the remaining part of carbon compounds are used for the regeneration of RUBP, so that the cycle will keep on continuing. So this is the end of photosynthesis, where carbon dioxide is being used up, okay, water is being used up, sunlight, that is photoexcitation of light occurs, chlorophyll molecules form the reaction center, okay, and what at the end are you getting? In the first phase you are getting ATPs, NADPH2. In the second phase, that is a dark phase, this NADPH2 gets reduced to form NADP, ATPs get reduced to form ADP and IP. This goes back to the grana part. Remaining part will be forming glucose, that is your main product of photosynthesis. This glucose would be stored in the form of starch, and during light reaction, or that what you say non-cyclic reaction, oxygen is released, which is the 6 molecules of oxygen. So you are getting 2 byproducts at the end of dark reaction, glucose and oxygen. So this was the end of photosynthesis. Alright.